Have you ever been to a bookstore not really knowing why you were there, perhaps just passing time, and suddenly a book caught your attention and popped up, and you discovered you could just not put it down? You had to have it as it presented information that was so very relevant to your current life situation. Or how about bumping into someone you haven't seen in ages, and while chatting randomly to that person, he or she provided some insight to a challenge you were facing that allowed you to view that challenge in a whole new light that was in fact life-altering? Well, psychologists and philosophers have attempted to define these random occurrences and make better sense of it for decades. It was psychologist Carl Jung who referred to these meaningful coincidences as synchronicities. We are in for quite a treat today, as I have with me in studio world-renowned human behavior expert and philosopher, Dr. John Demartini, to discuss synchronicities with us further. John, this is a fascinating, very mysterious topic, synchronicities. From what I understand, it falls under the branch of psychology or philosophy, under metaphysics. Tell us more about this branch of psychology.
Well, I think that everybody has had, on more than one occasion, experiences that have made them pause for thought.
Sure.
They thought about somebody and they just called, or they just happened to run into him. It's too frequent to ignore, not frequent enough to bet money on. It's right in that gray zone. I was thinking about a couple because I got invited to speak in Milan. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking of this one couple that live in that area. And they popped in my mind. And all of a sudden, this was on Friday night, this last week. And all of a sudden, they were at the seminar. And I hadn't seen them in I think, 3 years. And they were there at the seminar. And so, which is it? Which is the chicken and the egg? Did they think of me? Did I think of them? This is a question it's hard to define. But these are synchronicities. But what I found when I tried to dissect what's going on, because they've done studies on these and looked at probabilities of when things occur and how often these things occur. And this has been my observation. This is my assessment of it at this stage. I might have new insights tomorrow, but everybody has a set of priorities, a set of values, things that are most important and least more important in their life. And let's say that your highest value is being a mother, and you have 3 beautiful children. If you walk in a mall and that is your highest value with those 3 children, that woman will filter her reality to find things necessary for her children. There's a pulvinar region in the thalamus that is a gatekeeper or filter of what we see in our environment according to what we value most. So if we have a very high value on children, we will spot children's clothes, children's entertainment, education materials, anything to help us fulfill what we believe will be beneficial for our children. Now the husband of that wife, that mother, who may in all probability have a business focus in order to make it possible for her to raise the children, he will walk in that same mall and he will not spot anything to do with the children's clothes. He won't see anything. He'll see computer stores, he'll see bookstores, he'll see men's suits. He'll see anything that might filter and give him an advantage to his highest value. So what we do is we have a filtering system and we have a selective biased attention of information based on what we value most in life. I call this attention surplus order, the difference compared to attention deficit disorder. Because things that are lower on our value, we have attention deficit disorder.
Sure.
And a child, for instance, can be labeled attention deficit at school, but can sit there 6 hours in front of a video game and have it completely memorized and know completely holographic memory of everything to do with that video game. So they have an attention surplus disorder in a video game and attention deficit disorder for the rest of the classes they don't see related to what they value most. Now, because of that filtering mechanism, it not only filters our perceptions, it filters our memory. So we've all had people come up to us and say their name that we had 0 value on, and somebody came up, who was that? 100th of a second later, and we go.
So there's a selective bias.
Selective bias on remembering things. But if all of a sudden Hugh Jackman came up to you, and you liked Hugh Jackman, and they said, well, who was that? And you go, that's Huey, baby. You remember that, because it's high in your value.
Sure.
We also have a selective biased imagination.
Okay.
We will imagine the future based on our values more so and more easily than we could ever imagine what we don't want. And the same thing for intention. We are reliable and focused and dependable to be doing the thing that's highest on our values. So we will take action on it. So our sensory neurons, our inner neurons in our brain, and our motor neurons are literally accentuated, neuroplastically accentuated to make sure that we are capitalizing on what we value most. So as a result of that, we have, because of attention surplus, we see way more opportunities in our highest values than we ever see in our lowest values. I'll give an example. I was walking through a mall a number of years back, and I have a high value on learning. And the gentleman I happen to be walking with has an extremely high value on wealth building. I have a value on wealth building, but not as high as he did. As I was walking in the mall, I was noticing bookstore. I caught the bookstore. And he was noticing which stores had the most customers to buy stock in.
Okay.
So we were filtering completely different things. I think that's why they have Starbucks in the middle for everybody to recover shopping with somebody else.
I think so too.
To keep the coffee going, keeping us away, because we fall asleep on things that are not highest on our values, and we're wide awake for the other things. So our reticular activating system literally turns on and turns off based on our value systems, and we become awakened and alert or shut down. Now, because of that, if we think about something that's high in our value and we're concentrating on it, focusing on it, we see, and we have a higher probability of seeing opportunities that we call synchronous. And things that are lower on our values, we don't have synchronicities. So if we look at where our synchronicities are, it's usually when we're actually mulling over and thinking and having a high value on those things in our minds at the time, and go, oh my God, I was just thinking about that, boom, synchronicity. So if it's not high in our value, we don't notice the synchronicities as much as when it's really high in our values and important to us at that moment in our life. So there's definitely a neurological, not necessarily metaphysical, source to part of those synchronicities. But it's still hard to explain all of them.
Yes, yes.
Some of them are in that kind of zone that it's hard to put your finger on.
Yeah.
For instance, when I was in practice years ago, and when I consulted for a lot of doctors, I consulted for over 1,000 doctor clinics when in the 80s, and helping doctors. And we found consistently that if we took inactive patient files, and we could say that, let's say they had 1,000 inactive patient files, and we got staff members going in there, and we pull out 20 or 30 files per staff member, and read the files that had not been in 6 months to a year or years. We could just read the files, read the names of the people, read their family members' names, read what they do, what companies they were working at, what their chief complaint was, what their prognosis, diagnosis, treatment plans are. Just read the files. 20% of those patients would be within 1 week. We found that consistently, no matter what country I went into, and I was in 39 different locations around the world, that same consistent pattern of 20% of those people mysteriously called, referred somebody, showed up, ran into them in restaurants.
That's mysterious.
There was synchronicity went up because we increased our focus and a value on them, and your innermost dominant thought becomes your outermost tangible reality. We were thinking about them and bringing about them.
And I'm thinking about the law of attraction as you say that.
We sometimes call that the law of attraction.
Yeah. One incident that I had recently is I was thinking of this gentleman who consistently badgers me for interviews. And I had explained to him politely that I don't cover those specific subject areas. And then one day he popped into my mind because I thought to myself, well, it's been 2 years, he's been quiet. I hope he's winning on his side, but I'm relieved that he's not contacting me. And he contacted me on that day via email.
Yep.
So, I mean, that is like really random, mysterious.
Well, if we actually do a study on the probabilities of it, and this has been done, we find out that there are probabilities that are in our favor because of our awareness. So some of the mystery I want to take out and put in ways of increasing synchronicity. Because I'd rather give a practical thing that a person can do to help them have more synchronicity in their life.
Is it important to have more synchronicities?
I think that people who believe in synchronicities and believe that everything is happening in the way that's getting them what they want are more fulfilled and have more achievement in life. So I think when you live by your highest values, you have the highest probability of synchronicity. In fact, if we look carefully and do a study of people, go to a moment in their life when they felt they had a synchronicity, one of those coincident moments, and I'm document it down, and in the moments when they've gone where there's nothing happening like that. You'll find out that they're more congruent in their highest values during this period, and they're not here. And it's been shown over and over again. So I believe that part of that synchronicity and almost metaphysical component is because they're congruent and authentic and living synchronously, and their innermost dominant thought is becoming reality now.
Now, Carl Jung, who I mentioned earlier, spent about 20 years trying to make sense of synchronicity. And I came across some very interesting definitions. I just want to put this by you very quickly. Synchronicities are those moments of meaningful coincidence when the boundary dissolves between the inner and the outer. Synchronicities are expressions of the dreamlike nature of reality, as they are moments in time when the timeless, dreamlike nature of the universe shines forth its radiance and openly reveals itself to us, offering us an open doorway to elicit. It makes no sense to me. It sounds extremely opaque and complex, but does it make sense to you?
Yes.
Because I'm sure you've dissected the subject.
Yes, I've studied him.
Yeah.
First of all, when you are living congruently with your highest values, you become most present.
Okay.
And when you're most present, you enter into a world, which I do in the Breakthrough Experience. We work in the Breakthrough Experience program that I do to get to that state.
That state, dreamlike state.
Yeah, that's that metaphysical state almost.
Okay,
because what it is when you're present, you've extracted out space and time in the mind. And your memories and imaginations are what distort things.
Sure. I think I've experienced that in your breakthrough.
Yes.
It's kind of
we
like
make sure
it's like
everybody
you're floating.
Does. It's a very interesting state.
High.
It's a state of grace, a state of gratitude.
Floating meaning there's a sense of lightness. You're
Yes.
there's nothing standing in your way.
Less gravity, more radiation.
Lightness, yeah.
So what happens is, when you're infatuated with somebody, you are conscious of the things that support your values and unconscious of things that challenge it. When you're resentful to somebody, you're conscious of things that are challenging your highest values and, in a sense, unconscious of things that support it. So anytime you have an emotionally attraction or repulsion, you activate the amygdala part of the brain, the animal part of the brain, and you store those in your mind. You can't escape those distortions. Anytime you split the conscious and unconscious, it's stored in the subconscious mind, as some people call it.
Sure.
And it reverberates as incomplete information in the brain, as brain noise electronically. They found that for every memory, there's an anti-memory trying to balance it, but you're only conscious of one, you're not conscious of the other. When those are brought into balance and you become present, which is what increases the probability of that happening when you live by your highest values, that objective state, which means even-mindedness, you're aware of both, and now you've extracted out the memory and imagination, which is time in the mind, and you become present. And that highest value, that's why the synchronicities occur in there, and that is, in a sense, like a dreamlike state.
Sure.
And so what he's describing there is what we also see in the breakthrough experience, when people actually get really present and really grateful. I call it, when you have gratitude, love, inspiration, enthusiasm, certainty, and presence, you enter into that state of synchronicity. And it is reproducible, and we can increase the probability of it. And that's why I believe that it's wiser to, I don't want to negate the metaphysical, because that's always at the boundary of our frontiers of knowing. But at the same time, I want to find an answer to the metaphysical, because what was once...
make sense of it, as everyone in your field has been trying to make sense of this.
Yes, but I think we found solutions to that. What was once metaphysical is now physical, and then the metaphysics go on higher. And then what's metaphysical?
So it keeps expanding.
Keeps expanding. Whatever's known, there's always an unknown around it. And once we know that, the unknown goes beyond it. And that's why Aristotle said metaphysics is the book on top of physics. Physics is the study of life and the universe, and metaphysics is the speculative stuff that's needed as a theoretical understanding until we actually know.
So let me ask you a metaphysical question. Do you think that life is constantly built around synchronicities, and that we are aware of some and we're not aware of others? Like perhaps the negative ones, the challenging situations, maybe that we are attracting to learn certain lessons?
Well, I believe that nature has a balance of support and challenge. As you know, in the breakthrough experience, I show people this. I call it the matrix. And that as long as if you see somebody supporting your values and you're all elated about it, you're blind to the other side. And what I do is I ask questions to bring the unconscious conscious to make you aware of it. And you go, oh my God, there it was, I didn't see it.
Yep.
And then when you're challenged, I show you where the support was. And at all times, there's a pair of opposites there. But we are choosing not to see all of it. When we're fully conscious, super conscious, if you will, we see both. When we do, we have access to the synchronous state. And that's what Carl Jung was trying to describe. And he only called it a dream state is because this world here, when in the breakthrough experience, when they actually get to that synchronous state, this world, this thing you see out here in our reality shifts. And so we realized it was just our perceptions that created this reality. And we have now entered a kind of an altered state.
Yeah.
And that's why he was accurate in describing it like a dreamlike. Because for all we know, when we're in our dream, that seems just as real as this world.
Sure.
And some believe, as Schopenhauer says, the dream is dreaming us. The Kalahari Bushmen had said the same thing. The whole thing's a dream. And the Vedantas described it as the dream of Vishnu is dreaming the dream of Brahma, and Brahma is now dreaming the world of reality. And so we don't know for a fact sometimes which is the dream and which is reality.
I've had some of those moments where I ask myself, oh my God, okay, I'm still alive. It's weird moments that just don't make sense, where you're here but you're not really here. I don't even want to go into that because it's really tough. And then those moments kind of like disappear before you can actually grasp it and actually make sense of it.
Well, they found out in the brain that your brain during the day is half asleep, and during night, when you think you're asleep, is half awake. So the brain is never one or the other. It's never black or white, sleep or awake. It's always both.
I just want to come back quickly on the last point, what you said about maintaining or achieving a state of super consciousness. Do you think meditation plays a role in that?
Well, meditation can be used as an escape to dodge facing reality.
Okay.
Or it can be used in a full mindfulness manner and become poised and present and enter into the synchronous state. So yes, it can be used, but it's not always used wisely.